It's an age-old question. Should you run to improve your MMA performance? Now I'm going to give you a spoiler. I'm not going to tell you whether you should run or not run, but I'm going to lay out the pros and cons of using running in your MMA training, and then you can decide for yourself if you think it is a suitable training method for you to use. So let's start with arguments for running for MMA. And the first one is that you can easily target specific adaptations that might be more difficult when you're using technical MMA training. For example, technical MMA training can be variable. For example, if you are doing grappling, there are rests, there are scrambles. It's harder to work smoothly through various techniques and keep a constant pace. So if you're trying to do lower intensity conditioning, running is an easy modality because you can control the tempo, you can control your heart rate. Now, obviously that also applies to other forms of off-feet or cyclical cardio, for example, be on a rowing machine, a bike, etc. Now, the same thing is with higher intensity conditioning. For example, you can hit the heavy bag or perform spire rounds, but again, things can be variable, or because technique is involved, technique can become sloppy as you fatigue. When you're doing something like running, you can maintain higher intensity without worrying as much about technique, but we will cover that later on. Secondly, going for a run allows you to get fresh air if you're not on a treadmill or an assault runner inside a gym. Now, if you go back and listen to the second ever Sweet Science of Fighting podcast with Graham Morris, he talks about this, where it can be a good psychological thing to do as a fighter when you're spending all day within a closed room in a gym. Getting outside and going for a run can be good for your mindset and just general mental health. Now, am I saying that this is a huge benefit to your performance? No, but it is something to consider whether you decide to run or not for MMA. Lastly, there's no equipment needed to go running, just a pair of running shoes. In some cases, you can run bare feet if you're on soft ground, for example, grass field or sand on a beach. But it is low cost. You can do it straight from your home. You don't need to drive anywhere to do it. It's something you can literally get up in the morning and go do, or within your day or in the evening when you get back from work, you can just go for a run without having to do all this preparation to get your gear bag together, drive to the gym, spend 30 minutes in traffic, and then having to perform your session, come back home, etc. With a run, you can just walk out the door and start training. So let's move on to the cons of running for MMA. The first one is it takes away from your skill work. Now, this is dependent on the level of MMA fighter you are. If you are a relative novice or intermediate, this may be an issue because you need to spend more time doing the skills, especially within MMA when you have a lot of different martial arts to cover. For example, your grappling, your striking, your fence wrestling, etc. You need to be able to fit all those within your training week. If you are working full time, you only have a certain amount of sessions per week to train. And if you remove one of those to go running, or even two of those to go running, that is time that could be spent developing these skills, which will have a greater benefit towards your MMA performance than improving your conditioning through MMA. Now, you can also use your skill work to develop your conditioning in these scenarios. You can perform the various skills and techniques in circuit formats with partners, etc., to develop this conditioning without going running. Secondly, conditioning does not solely refer to energy systems. So we can develop the physiological processes of various energy systems. We can target predominantly some energy systems over others. But fight performance conditioning is not just about energy systems. Conditioning is about being fully prepared, and this is about being conditioned to perform the movements within the sport. So if you're solely performing running, biking, and swimming, and you're not doing a lot of your conditioning work using the MMA specific movements, you may struggle to find that transfer. A very crude example is if you're about to run a marathon, you did all your training in a pool swimming, you will find that that training does not transfer over to your running performance. Obviously, you're doing a lot of MMA skill work, so some of that transfer will come over. But if you're doing a lot of your training running and not doing as much skill work, you may find that it's not transferring over as well. So potentially, in conjunction with the first one there, prioritizing your skill work and performing your conditioning within your skill work may be a better option. Obviously, if you are a more advanced MMA athlete and you're spending a lot of time in the gym working on those skills and you already have a lot of those quote unquote mastered, You may find more benefit spending some time away from the gym and performing some type of cross-training, so you're not doing a lot of these same things over and over again, which can potentially increase your risk of injury. Another con is that you cannot scale the intensity of running without dramatically increasing your risk of injury. If you look at any team sport, soccer, rugby, AFL, the biggest issues are hamstring strains. Obviously, as you scale the risk of running, you start to become sprinting. And if you are not adapted to sprinting, you don't have good mechanics, you significantly increase your risk of hamstring strain when sprinting. This is not something that you need to expose yourself to improve MMA performance, and therefore it's not worth exposing yourself to that injury risk by sprinting. Instead, if you're going to do some kind of intensity work, you could do that on an off-feet piece of cardio equipment like a spin bike, assault bike, watt bike, rowing machine, etc. But with running, I would avoid this. Further, you can hit intensity within your technical session, for example, sparring, shark tanks, etc. As I mentioned in the pros section with forerunning, non-technical conditioning, you can easily control the intensities and the adaptations that you're trying to go after, but you cannot do so well within skill work. But regardless, with running, sprinting is not a good idea. Increase the intensity of your running through sprinting is generally not a good idea for your MMA performance. Finally, there are potentially better ways to perform your low intensity conditioning than running. For example, if you're doing, say, an active recovery or recovery session, you could be in the pool, you could be on a bike doing something that's no impact, you could be doing various mobility circuits. These things will elevate your heart rate, get you in the low intensity conditioning zone, and you don't have the impact and the cyclical nature of running. Now, if you are used to running, you run a lot already, you have no problems with running, then sure, go ahead and continue doing what you're doing. If you enjoy it, you don't have any issues. The problem is where people come into sports like MMA and they don't have a running background, or they haven't run in years and they decide to start running again because they feel like that is what is needed to improve MMA performance. It is not. In those instances, I would advise against running and using other things that your body might be used to, or trying to implement that within your skill work. So should you run for your MMA performance? It is up to you whether you decide whether you think running will benefit your performance. You need to consider, does it take away from your skill work and technical training? Do you have time to add it into your training schedule? Do you have time to recover from it within your training schedule? Do you think your time will be better off spent doing something else other than running? These are the things only you can answer because your schedule is unique and your life schedule is unique to you. Please make sure to like, subscribe, make sure you hit the notification bell, share with anyone. In the description or in the pinned comments, there'll be a link to the Sweet Science of Fighting Underground that has all of the training programs, online courses, and private Discord community. But I'll see you in the next video.